Hi everyone, welcome to Appliance Advisers. I'm Francesco, joined by Dennis. Today we're going to talk about the best counter depth refrigerator. And just before we even get into brands or anything like that, let's just talk about what is a counter depth refrigerator. So we're talking about the difference here. You hear a lot counter depth, standard depth, or full depth. What a counter depth refrigerator is, and again, we're talking freestanding refrigerators that kind of slide into a space here. Counter depth means that the body of the fridge itself is about 24 inches deep to mirror a standard depth of a cabinet. Outside of that, what will stick out from your standard cabinet is your door and your handles. Full depth, conversely, what you see for a full depth or standard depth refrigerator, they're going to be deeper. So now the body of the refrigerator, typically 28 inches or so, it's about 3 to 4 inches deeper than what a standard cabinet is, plus the door and the handle. So counter depth has really kind of overtaken standard or full depth, really for that kind of cleaner look, built-in style look, more for a freestanding refrigerator. So just to kind of clear up, that's what we're talking about here, is counter depth refrigerators. Now let's talk about some of the brands. So let's start with LG, who makes some really terrific refrigerators. What do we think there?
Yeah, terrific refrigerators with low service. I mean, it's kind of a home run. So LG and Samsung, those two companies produced a lot of these bottom counter depth refrigerators. They brought a lot of technology into their fridges.
Big time.
So you saw glass doors, you could knock on the glass. They call it knock to open, or knock InstaView, where you knock on the glass and the lights turn on. Door in door, where the doors are kind of two doors within one, so you could open it and just get this stuff right at the very close.
Like
so you
your
don't
condiments or something
easy,
you access quickly.
a drink or whatever you go to often. And then a lot of technology inside. Now the Korean companies definitely push innovation in terms of they're way ahead of lighting and tech features. LG certainly does all that with a super low service rating, which I generally don't see when people push tech that fast.
Especially on counter depth refrigeration.
They're able to do it. So kudos to them. Now, if to this point had been a knock on them, was that, as we said, the idea that the body of the fridge is flush with your cabinets in a counter depth, but the door's sticking out. Most of the American brands that had counter depth refrigerators, which have had them for years, you needed a 3-inch filler. So the cabinets to the left and right of it, you needed to keep 3 inches before you started the next cabinet for the door to be able to open to 90 degrees, to be able to get your crisper bins out or clean it easily and access it. That was a standard. The Korean companies built these big, massive doors, trying to get bigger space and just all this InstaView knock on doors and all this stuff. But what it created was a very big door. And this door now, in those brands to this point, for the longest time, required 5 or 6 inches of a filler. That's a lot in a kitchen when you're trying to maximize it. So while we love everything they're doing, a fair amount of returns when people didn't really pay attention to that, or as much, there was a trade-off to maybe a cabinet because you're grabbing more space on either side. That was a problem. Still can be in a lot of their models. But then they came out with the counter depth, the Ultra Max, or the counter depth Max. And what counter depth Max was an industry first. They haven't shared it, but a proprietary insulation way to insulate the refrigerator to make the sidewalls and traditional insulation much, much, much thinner, so that the interior capacity of a counter depth refrigerator could be much bigger. When you talk about standard depth refrigerators versus counter depth initially, and we know that the standard depth or full depth is much deeper than a counter depth, you got more space. But in that full depth refrigerator versus kind of that space while there is in depth, truly front to back. So food tends to get buried. So while you got more space, it's always been that big debate over, was it functional space or was it the food you're like, oh my God, that's spoiled.
When's the last time you looked at that food?
When did you pull everything to the front? Okay, so LG comes forward and they say, hey, let's make this Ultramax, this thinner insulation. We can get 27 cubic feet of space. To this point, we've never seen a counter depth over 23 really. And a full depth is anywhere between 25, and you can get some closer to 30, but 27 was like the standard of a full depth fridge. in these big, they were able to do it tight to the counter with this new installation. So that came out probably about 9 months ago now. Sells tremendously well. They still had the challenge with the thicker door, but the interior space was amazing. So I give them a lot of credit there. So they changed the thinking, and now, of course, everyone's going to knock it off. So you're going to see Samsung try to come out with some version of this. You'll see American, you see Whirlpool, you see these companies trying to do a similar thing. Now, they've never been able to do it with the low service rating of an LG. Most brands haven't been able to, but it was kind of a cool thing. And I will say this without disclosing, because I can't. Today, the Ultramax, they launch it at the masses in LG proper. But we know that LG has steps, and they have LG Studio, and then they have Signature Kitchen Suite, a very high-end premium. But in those two, the one knock to it, if I were to be honest, is I think their door bins are just okay in the Ultramax. And I think as they start to release more models, they will start to get a nicer interior. The beautiful part is it's very affordable. But I think when they increase the interior, there'll be a few other options. That's probably the one knock to this first release for them. And I can't talk too much about some of the other things I've seen that they're doing, but when you go to a private room or a showing, or if you're over in Korea and you get to see kind of what they're thinking of next, this company is aware of the depths of its doors and the bugaboos with all its products. And like they introduced Ultramax here, I think the sky's the limit where this company's innovation is like, I've never, I mean, they're thinking of things that, even though we think about this all day long, clearly they do too, and holy smokes, it's pretty, some of it's really, wow, will that work? But then there's enough there that you're like,
they have, like you said, feature-wise, and even now, like maybe away from the Counter Depth Max series, but like you look at some of their kind of step-up models, I mean, they look phenomenal.
Phenomenal, yes.
Metal cooling, all interior stainless steel, really nice adjustable shelving, 2 kinds of ice with the craft ice and your standard ice. Like they really do some really
absolutely.
Nice
If you could, if the 5 or 6 inches, for 85% of the people, it works. But it's just something we point out because it's probably the one thing that's not is easily thought about when you're shopping.
For sure.
So you just want to be aware of how that works in your space, especially if you're replacing something pre-existing.
Definitely.
Think about how those doors will open and do you have those clearances? But aside from that, if I could fit it, I'd do an LG fridge all day long. I think it's an amazing refrigerator, even to your point before Ultramax. And I think that's the next platform to them to continue to just go.
So next brand now, let's jump to Bosch. So Bosch historically had been someone that didn't really do much of their own refrigeration, kind of always had it sourced for them. Now, a couple years ago, they came out with all their own Bosch-made freestanding refrigeration. What are your thoughts there?
So Bosch did a really nice job, and they needed to because they were OEMing everything before this. Someone else was producing for them for the most part. And I would say nothing about it was special, and it was kind of just okay quality. Their new refrigeration lineup, they are actually producing it. It's their first counter depth production of their own, and it's a solid one. I mean, they took some takeaways from, we always bring up Sub-Zero, always having that dual compressor story, where there's just a compressor for the fridge and just one for the freezer, where most, to that point, standards were just one compressor. So 2 compressors maintaining constant temperature just within its own unit compartment of fridge or freezer, longer life. They mimicked that and did that in their Thermador brands. In their Thermador built-in brands have 2 compressors. Now you move down to the Bosch. And so they're really the first counter depth refrigerator to take away from the premium brands like Thermador and Sub-Zero that had these dual compressor stories and have introduced it in a counter depth, all the while really being smart about it. So what we see with a lot of brands is, and you're seeing a trend too, because as retailers and I think as consumers, it resonates, you're not always doing a new kitchen, and refrigerators die. And sometimes less is more, less handles and conflicting handles, and if you want to mix brands and whatnot. So these pocket handles have been really smart, where there isn't a true handle. It's a scoop, or it's just an area to pull open the door so that you can put into any existing space, or long-term it will mix with any other appliances and you're not having multiple handles. They've thought of everything. So the 2 compressors, they have options in most of their major models, because they have a few different models, of having a pocket or a tubular handle. Interiorly, they have great lighting. I think their door bins are solid. Their freezer's well laid out. I mean, it does very well. Very clean aesthetic, goes with a lot of brands well. You can mix and match it very easily. So it's really been a home run lineup for them. And I'd also say to you that they've even thought of they have that one unit that's only 70 inches tall, which the trend now when you're doing countertop refrigeration is your space should be 36 inches wide by 72 inches opening height. But before this new trend of going to 72, 70 was a very common size, and they still haven't forgotten about that. And they do have one counter depth that goes to 70. It's not there. It has one compressor.
Exactly.
It doesn't have all the fit and feel and feature,
water,
but it's still a good looking fridge. And if you're stuck with 70, it's as good as anyone else out there.
Definitely good for replacement. Like you said, they have a few other options too. You can they have options with the external drawer if you want a separate temperature controlled drawer as well. The regular 3 doors with kind of the 2 doors and the drawer underneath. So they do give you a lot of different options there as well.
Correct.
So now the last brand we're going to talk about. So the last brand to consider for freestanding counter depth, GE. So a lot there with GE, big brand.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you, solid refrigerator. I'm not no superior innovation there, but a solid tried and true refrigerator. They have some innovation with lighting. They have a light wall that they had in Select series. Their modern glass series kind of introduced it in some of their under-counter refrigeration, where the back wall is really, it's beautiful. It really if you haven't seen it, I mean, it's something, honestly. I do sometimes, while I'm not on the floor as often as I used to be, when I go out there, I will always watch when someone opens one of these in GE, because no one would open that and not be like, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It really is something. And lighting inside a refrigerator is key, because this whole back wall is lit. And it's very classically done with some little design on it. But food blocks everything. So when you have lights on the side, depending, your fridge can get very dark. This is kind of a cool way to do it. So while that's innovation, I wouldn't say anything else is earth-shattering, because it's not. It's as good as anyone else. I think the Bosch and the LG are going in some different directions with the Ultramax and some of that. But where they kind of shine is finishes. So they kind of have a look for anyone. So we talked about a modern glass, which is just that. No handles, very clean, modern look.
Glass over stainless steel kind of look.
Kind of a graphite back, like it's good. It's a suite, and they do that suited. And then for the rest of their countertop refrigeration, you have it in profile, and you have it in cafe. And we know with GE Cafe, the cool part there is stainless steel, but certainly a lot of colors and mixed metal finishes for handles. So you can really kind of, if you want kind of that customized look that was always only for that exclusive price point of really, really, really expensive, you can do this very affordably and have fun playing around with colors, whether it's matte white, matte black. They're always mixing a new color in the new year, as well as stainless. They kind of give you some flexibility. And I think it's almost 6 or 8 different types of mixed metals you can use for handles. So that's kind of fun. And then you get into profile. Kind of a good-looking neutral fridge. Handles kind of a transitional, goes with anything. And a value line, like it generally is a good price point.
Yeah, they'll give you a lot of different options at a lot of different price points within all their lines, for sure. A lot to consider there.
Now, the minute this post goes live, someone will say, well, GE has a Keurig ice maker in the front of their refrigerator. Either incredibly brilliant or incredibly dumb, because we know that those things break a lot and they only make a finite amount of coffee. But they do that also with an instant hot. So if you're a big tea drinker, that is cool innovation.
Yeah, it's unique for sure.
I'll tell you, we sell some.
Yeah.
But some are small, double digits, very small, just over singles.
Sure.
It's innovative, but I don't know. I think it's going to run away with it.
Fair enough. So those are going to be all the best brands to consider for counter depth refrigeration. So if you're looking, we definitely strongly recommend looking at LG, Bosch, and GE.
And don't forget to follow us on social media for appliance tips and updates from Yale Appliance.
Your feedback is what shapes our series. Like what you saw, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you.
Stay informed and inspired on all your appliance needs. This is Appliance Advisors signing off.